How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm like so thrilled to be talking to you because I was just thinking, I feel like I'm about to talk to somebody before they break the internet because this episode of
Oh,
Yellowjackets that you directed, I feel like is gonna break the internet. Um, but
it's crazy.
yeah.
It's crazy.
And then you're working on you too. So my first question was like, what do you look for in projects? Because you're working on a lot of high profile things that are a little dark, I guess, too.
Yeah, it's funny. I have the rare benefit in TV of doing comedy and drama. So I'll go from you and Yellowjackets to Ghosts. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
And so it's a tightrope that I like to walk. If you ask me, or when you ask me about what I look for, I'm definitely interested in things that walk a tone tightrope. So, from Yellow Jackets, you've got the drama, obviously. You've got it's so many genres in there. It's like somewhat thriller, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You've got levity along the way. And depending upon the episode, like you get more or less of one than the other. I think we had a very heightened dramatic episode in Thanksgiving Canada. But I love to be able to like use everything that I've learned as a director as far as like working with actors, uh, using the camera, blocking, and all of it to kind of like really do something challenging.
Well, this episode had to be a challenge. So my jaw is still on the floor from it. But I was thinking, what was it like reading the script for this and thinking about how you wanted to approach it? And did you get a choice of which episode you wanted to do?
No, that's a great question. No, you never do.
Yeah, I always wonder. I always ask that, but it seems like it's kind of just people get handed off
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Like I remember reading about someone, I don't recall who, but it was like their first episode ever, and they ended up getting an Emmy for it. And it was like they got that because somebody else dropped out and then they were available and then they got the Emmy.
Yeah.
So, I do think what I've been fortunate to have happen is because I do comedy and drama, and I guess I've done some stuff where it's like, oh, that's like interesting camera work. I have been fortunately kind of sought for episodes that have that in them. So I don't know. I'll ask. I'm doing a live podcast next week, uh, and I'll
Yes,
ask
I heard
Bart
about
and
that.
Ashley
Yes.
about that,
Yeah.
how they picked. But when I read it, I was really excited about obviously, and I don't know what can I speak directly or
Go ahead. Yeah. Say
yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Go ahead.
As far as like the Ben and Natalie of it all, like obviously I was like, oh my God, this is going to be it's it's going to have such payoff for the series and the season and these characters. So like I really want to honor that and do something that elevates it. And then I was also excited about the first kind of like time lapse montage of like it's about 6 weeks as we go from summer into fall, and
Yeah.
we see the evolution of Ben and his hunger strike and everything to kind of set up the Ben
Yeah.
uh and Teen Nat of it all. And that part was only like one page, but it took me 8 hours to shoot it,
Wow.
because I really wanted to do something like that I hope was unique and impactful with it.
Oh, it was. I was just blown away by this episode. I thought it was like I said, you're gonna break the internet with this. There's a real sense of loss too, and not just with Coach Ben, but with this loss of innocence. Like this was the
Yeah.
last adult in the wilderness. How
Mm.
did that play into your direction?
Yeah. The beautiful thing about a show like Yellow Jackets where everyone is so good, and it's the way I enter any show, like I enter expecting and hoping that each actor is going to like do their job at 1,000%. And I'm there to keep an eye on that, to find maybe blind spots where we can, elevate something or maybe take a different path toward the same target. And so I was very pleasantly surprised at just how dialed in every actor was. Some I already had enough of an experience with their work that I was like, oh, they're going to be amazing. Sophie Thatcher and Steven Kruger in this episode, like they were just bringing it.
Yeah.
And I remember telling Steven, because I don't know, it's tough for me now to remember what was day one, but because it feels like two different shows between the present day and the
Yeah.
25 years ago. But I think that montage stuff was day one in the wilderness. And there's so much going on when you're shooting and you're looking, or at least I don't, I prefer to be at the smaller monitors so I can be closer to the actors. And only when I watched dailies did I see like this one like little tear moment that Steven had delivered. And I was like, I told him, I was like, yo, I was already happy with what was happening because I'm watching it and feeling it. But like, I missed that thing that you did that elevated it even more. And, even with Sophie, like, I think it just comes down to an actor's choices. That's really like their currency, like what to not
Yeah.
do, and then
Yeah.
how to do what they do when they do it. So yeah, I was there to really just kind of like amplify that, and I think there's a few little moments that like I'm really proud of. Like, um, it's funny, you never know how things are going to come into play, but I'm a kind of guy like I've done stuff with knives before. And so like there's just like a little moment where I was like, well, I think we get a nice progression toward the final event.
Yes.
If you flip the knife, there's a thing you do with a knife where you want to put your thumb over the bottom because if you actually use it, if you don't do that, you can slide your hand across the blade. And
Oh,
so that's what that prevents you from doing, right? And so
yeah.
I was like, if you do something like that, like it will really show like you're the knife wielder of this group, but also you have now made the decision to do it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those little moments, like maybe people will notice it or not, but
I'm gonna have to rewatch it
I
now.
think it like it's a thing that drives it home for what the actors are doing. So yeah.
Yeah. What was it like filming that final scene? Like I was so impressed. Well, the final scene between Sophie and Steven, because I was so impressed with Nat is young Nat is such a standout in this episode, and his thank you is just like broke my heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was it like filming that scene?
You want to you want to create the environment as a director for them to be able to live in that space. I mean, that's a real thing as a character, but it's also a real thing as the actor, like Stevens, you've been on the show since the beginning.
Yeah.
Like you read a script and you're like, this is it for me. Okay. And even if it's satisfying as a story element, there is also the potential reality of like, this is my family and I'm not coming back after we shoot that scene,
Yeah.
So like really kind of honoring the emotional reality of that, both for the person and the actor, and then trying to find a place where like you can explore things. And also, I feel like the job at a minimum of the director is to be like the arbiter of good taste, and at some point, you have to advocate for decisions, that for things that other people may think don't work. And I can remember there were a couple people who were like, oh, well, she had all this snot in her nose. And I'm like, no, that's what it is, man.
Yeah.
Like, what are we sanitizing it for?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're already like, not going to show you a whole bunch of blood and all that stuff
Right.
because it's about the decision and the
Mhm.
and the and the camaraderie even you could argue. But like the fact that that's happening from her nose, like that's as real as it gets. And why would we not embrace that? So
Right.
even a little thing like that where you're like, I think we should keep that. Um,
Yeah. Uh,
yeah.
it was so well done. It was like I was so moved by this episode. And then of course we've got the final scene. Um, were there hints throughout the episode that we were in for a twist? Did you drop anything directorially or anything?
That's interesting. No, I don't think so.
No.
I mean, the only thing kind of propelling us toward that was, Lottie's kind of conflict, with her abilities to communicate with the wilderness, you know, but I don't think you could foresee how that reconnection was going to happen.
I'm still thinking it's such a mic drop ending. Um, do they usually put the heads of their sacrifices on a stake? Was that something new? Because with Ben's head on the,
Mhm.
or was that something I can't remember in other like other
Yeah.
sacrifices. Have they ever done anything like that?
You know, I don't want to misspeak. I don't think they did, or if they did, it wasn't something that was given the spotlight. It wasn't
Yeah.
featured. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was that something you talked about, like with, was it in the script or was it
It
like,
was it was in the script, and it was such a like, there's also that kind of perfect, and I will say now I realize I'm going off of my cut.
yeah.
And I haven't seen the network cut, which will air Friday and Sunday. But in my cut, there was like a really nice moment where we track down the table past Ben's head, and we find Misty kind of looking at it, and then she takes a bite. I don't know if that's in there. She
I
takes a
can't
bite of
remember. I'm gonna have
food.
to rewatch now and see.
But it was like, in speaking just to Samantha Hanratty's like talent too, like I could give, which is a horrible direction, but I could say, yeah, I just like I want to find you off of Ben's head, and like I just want some like misty shit. You know what I mean? And like, and then she does the take, and I'm like, that's what I'm looking for. I had no vocabulary to like get that performance from you other than to say that. And she landed the plane.
She's so good too. I can't remember if this is the episode where she says, "You were my first love and my first amputation." No, I think it was the previous one where she says, "You were
Uh
my first amputation."
yeah,
But
yeah,
that whole scene too with her saying goodbye was really, really
yeah.
tragic and just this is such a great episode. I think it's gonna, like I said, break the internet. So yeah, tell me about your podcast a little bit. You're doing an event, special event next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon. Started it in 2020, like at the height of just being home
Yeah.
24/7. And I missed those conversations that I would have with like other creative counterparts. So started it. We talk about story, we talk about career trajectories, we talk about like survival in the industry. And I have people in front of the camera like Kaylee Cuoco, Issa Rae, Aya Cash, to folks behind the camera, DPs, editors, other directors. And so on the 19th, we're doing our first live podcast event. And it will include a screening of my Yellowjackets episode, and then a talk back with Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson, who created the show. Jeff Bird, who's the producing director and an EP. He directed 305, episode
Okay.
305. And then we'll have Courtney Eaton, who plays Young Lottie, and Warren Cole, who plays Jeff Sadecki. And it'll be a Dynasty typewriter. There'll be a live stream for folks who can't make it. They won't be able to watch the episode, but they'll be able to participate or watch the talk back after the episode. So first live one, it'll be out of gosh, this will be episode 80, I believe,
Oh
or
my gosh.
81. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing. I can't wait to. I'm always looking for new podcasts. So I was like, oh, I'm adding this to my running list of I need to not do true crime podcasts as much anymore. So
I
this
know.
sounds
There's
like a
only so
refreshing
much
one.
time.
Yeah. That's great though. I can't wait to listen to it. So awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time. Thank you so much for this episode. Like
Oh, thank you.
seriously, like I'm like I can't believe I actually get to talk to you before this airs because I think
That's cool.
that's
It's
amazing.
really cool to chat with you too, because it's like, you make a thing and you don't know how it's gonna land. And then this was like the first episode I've done where two different executives at Lionsgate reached out and said, whoa, like you like really pulled this off. And we
Yeah.
were we were like concerned about some of the like tonal like challenges
Yeah.
of it. So I'm excited to see what like fans of the show experience because it's yeah, a lot, there's a lot on the plate, no pun intended.